Okay, so we're back on longevity tech tree stuff. We've already taken a really, really far way out. We've roamed all the way through space and neurotech, then took it down into decentralized computing and into AI, and now we're taking it into longevity and biotech. And I'm so thrilled, actually, in fact, super honored to be on the same panel with all of you guys. Thank you so much for taking the leap and making it all the way here. I know that this was a really difficult journey to come here for all of us, and I think it's much appreciated, and I'm hoping that we can really grow a few very lovely trees from this. Okay, so first slide up here, we have Nikolina. Nikolina is joining us as a 2022 Foresight Fellow, and actually I think we met through Gordon, through a 2020 Foresight Fellow recommending Gordon as a speaker. We then had Gordon on as a speaker. I got totally in love with GlycanAge, and then through that we met you. And what you do is totally, utterly incredible. So tell us a little bit more about what is your focus technology? What are you working on? What do you think are a few exciting goals in the area? And what can other people do to help?
So ours is very specific to the human glycan. So it's a part of biology that maybe hasn't been utilized. Is this better? Okay. Okay, so Gordon is a glycobiologist. He's actually a bit of a pioneer in the field. So they did the first largest human glycan studies. Is this better?
Yeah.
And they found that whenever you look at glycans and you're looking at any disease, you have to know the age of a person because age was the strongest factor. So they modeled this aging clock maybe about 11 years ago now. And it was more of an academic side project. And now it's even a consumer product. It's used by physicians and it inspires behavioral change. So we can unlock maybe starting this extra years of healthy life that we have locked in our lifestyle, and then evaluate all the therapies coming out to see if they're working towards more healthy years.
Lovely. And what is an enabling technology or a key challenge that you would like to see solved?
It's very specific to the field. So high throughput glycomics is still a new thing, or he said that if sequencing the human genome was like going to Mars, going to the moon, sequencing or analyzing the human glycan is like going to Mars. So there's a lot of hidden information that we know very little about. And another part where they put in there. So biobanks, we have already a few, but not all of them are age related. So we looked at 150,000 people, most of them disease cohorts, but some were longitudinal, just looking at age. And so having access to more of these biobanks, which was just looking at aging, so we can learn more. What else did we put in there?
Maybe bring people who here actually has a good grasp of what Nikolina is speaking about, because I think this is so interdisciplinary. Maybe it makes sense for you to bring people up to speed in a minute or so of what is GlycanAge doing, what it is that you're working on, how is it related to longevity?
So glycans are a key part of cell biology. You have them on all of your proteins, and you can think of them as epiproteomics. So they're the most complex post-translational modification of proteins. And they're also inherited as a complex trait. So you have a big genetic component that influences it and then combines it with your current behavior and environment. So when you're looking at, you can really see what's happening with your biology right now with all the different influences. We look at the immune system, where we look at antibodies, and then this glycans around the antibodies. And as we're getting older, we accumulate this low-grade chronic inflammation, or we call it sterile systemic inflammation. And that's, it can change sometimes a decade before a certain disease. And with certain structures, we know they're even causal for hypertension, insulin resistance. We know that the glycans change up to 7 years before you, for example, develop pre-hypertension, and they're also causal. So they're not just a biomarker, they're actually a functional effector that's driving the disease. And because they're this early molecular, starting with biological aging, so before it's disease specific, you can identify it early enough to potentially prevent it.
How to remove specifically and which senescent cells and which organ and tissue. And that's where we want to create this link and link it all together and then find specific drug targets even that are involved in these biological mechanisms and then design drugs. And that's the first point in the AI, is also then the design of these small molecules then to these targets where we can learn a lot from drugs that already work through similar targets, so to decipher molecular patterns. I think I stop here for now.
Wow. No small feat. Yeah, we had a fantastic session in our biotech virtual seminars with Morgan Levine, who is really working on biomarker standardization, which I think is something like there's so many amazing tests out there, and like I think we really need to get better even of just like cross-checking and cross-verifying different biomarkers over time. All right. Okay. Another very big box of Pandora open here. And now the third one. Michael, I'll put up your slide. Tell us a little bit more. What is that you're focused on and what are other challenges you want people to solve?
Thank you. So I run Forever Healthy, for those of you who don't know. I have a very, very personal approach to the whole thing, to healthy longevity. I want to be as healthy for as long as possible. And that makes things a bit, it's a bit wider approach. So first thing that you have to consider what means healthy. And healthy does not only mean rejuvenation, because you can be 25 and still in a very bad place, like overweight, unhealthy, depressed and whatever. So health is more than just taking people back from old age to young age. So, so coming back from the future, basically what we are working on is a paradigm shift in medicine, because currently medicine works on, okay, we make people healthy again. And simply said, what we are working on, we want to have a medicine that keeps healthy people healthy by whatever it takes. So what does it mean? And in the next iteration of going back from the future is, for me as somebody who wants to use it, it should be as easy as possible. And for all of you who do longevity or healthy living and all these therapies for yourself, it's really hard to do. It's hard to do the tests. It's hard to find the right information. So it's not easy. And I wish for an environment where it's totally painless, totally easy, totally natural for me to do this. So the next thing that I need for that is doctors who know how to do this, or like consultants who help me on this way, on staying healthy. And I would like to have a service environment where I go like a super car repair shop, where I take my sports car and they just take care of everything. And if I get it back, I don't have to check whether they have the screws on the wheel turns correctly and all the stuff, which you have to do nowadays when you go to the doctor. And so this is what I envision. I would like to have a service environment. But then the whole thing I think that we need to have this is four things. The first thing that we need is we need actionable information. We need exactly to know what to do at every given point in time. That might also include the first rejuvenation therapies, but it also could be which supplement do I take, what is the optimal nutrition for me, so all that stuff. So, and we need reliable information. The second thing, and we're working with that. The second thing that's totally missing, that might not be on top of everybody's head, we don't have technical means to store all our data on a client or personal centered level. Your data is stored at each doctor individually, but you don't have your health data representing your health, the history or the imaging, the diagnosis, whatever happened to you in a central place where you own the data. And basically it should be something like a WordPress or your personal health data. Yeah. And then we need rejuvenation therapies, of course. What did I have? Yeah, the knowledge of the therapies. Yes, of course we need rejuvenation because we cannot keep ourselves healthy by just eating correctly or exercising. So that's as well. For the challenges, I think there are two, or it's a combined challenge, because we are working in the field of financing these rejuvenation therapies. What I think will happen pretty soon is there will be more money than startups that could be funded.
Terrible.
Yes, and it's terrible, because once the financial markets really pick up on the notion what it means that we have rejuvenation therapies, because that means in the end of the day, you treat everybody over the age of 40. That's 4 billion people on the planet, and you give them something every month. So that's a completely different market than current medicine. So once financial markets get that, and we're working on this by having the first therapies, there's going to be a lot of money. But then what we need is opposed to conventional technology markets, like in the internet, you have the basic technology, the HTML, the HTTP protocol, the server, the client, the network, and you could build whatever application you want on it. That's not the same in rejuvenation. So it's one research discovery, one startup. For the next startup, you need a complete research project. For example, we're working on cross-link breaking. That has been a 10-year process until we were to the point that we could incubate a startup on top of it. So I think, but we need two things. So we need more researchers that are actually willing to do translational research, because a lot of researchers, they want to research their one thing, and once they're done, they want to go to the next thing and do that thing, instead of bringing this one thing to a point where it can be turned into a therapy. So we need to encourage researchers to translational research, to really bring something into a startup, and encouraging them also to join the startup then with an entrepreneur or a team of entrepreneurs who turn it into a therapy for humans. And the second thing that we should do is we should try to find ways to get to this enormous amount of money that's floating around that wants to invest. And they're used to invest in startups, and we have to find mechanisms so that they can invest in research. So that's the next challenge. We have to make channels so that the VC money can flow into entities that finance research, and then at the very earliest stage in order to encourage that. And these two things combined can really speed up things.
Wow, no small feat. I love that how you're already mentioning, I think something that the crypto panel could perhaps help with, which is really just like your own individual data wallet for this. And so that would be nice in the AI one. And we have a few connecting nodes there already. Are there any questions already? Questions, comments from anyone here? Who is interested in longevity? Who's not into longevity? Okay, good.
A few of you mentioned the need for biomarkers. We'll need to get it government approved so we can ship a drug. It's needed for research. I'm curious, I guess I could use the mic. I'm curious what biomarkers you envision in the near future or the far future. Like, what's the ideal combination for you to measure aging fundamentally rather than age-related disease?
Anyone?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, the goal is really, it goes back to what I said before, is not, when does aging start, So for example, I use just for an example, because it's really illustrative. It's this retinitis pigmentosa disease that you get when you're 20. So basically, it starts when you're 20. So if you would know, like 10 years before or even earlier, that you would have that disease, because it's already in the eye. It is possible that these photoreceptors, they already degenerate. So this is what I mean with biomarkers, for every organ and tissue, you actually detect the onset of the degeneration before it manifests in symptoms.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I can only second that, because there's a lot of talk about aging biomarkers. But I think you have to understand that these are always, it's like a clock that only can go forward. So, for example, DNA methylation or what all of these generic markers, particularly your age is like 67 or whatever, is like that clock is pushed forward by processes in your body. But it can now reverse a single of these processes. The clock is not probably going to go backwards. For example, if you rejuvenate, what for one of our startups is doing, like remove the plaque from the arteries to turn your arteries be young again and to prevent heart attacks, this will not show up in DNA methylation. But you still won't have a heart attack, and your arteries will be rejuvenated in terms of the plaque status like young. Or if you decalcify them, or if you break crosslinks, if you didn't do 1,000 things. So it would be nice if you have this single one block, but the reality will be you have hundreds of markers, and that's a good thing, because then they indicate a certain damage, a certain disease, and then you focus on that damage, you focus on that disease, you reverse that, and you can then manage that. So less plaque, okay, that's good. That's a good biomarker then. Correct. Yeah.
And Lina, I think to add.
I think we have an excellent biomarker for immune aging, which is quite general, and actually interesting, it does start, so we don't look at under 18 because it does start about post-teens because as your immune system is developing, and then it starts to go up naturally with aging, and you can speed it up and slow it down with different lifestyle, and you can reverse it. So we have lots of mainly lifestyle-focused studies where caloric restriction or weight loss or different diets, but also different diets work for different people. So they made a diet could be good for one person, could be harmful for another. Exercise as well, certain types work, others cause damage. So we can, and we have some drug-related like estrogen post-menopause, that seems to reverse the clock as well. But it's immune aging, and that's quite general, but it's not probably every single organ. For example, skin or eyes could certainly move at a different pace. And there was this study that's done by Edinburgh University, it's still in preprint, but they looked at all of the molecular aging clocks that we have now. So from DNA methylation, but they were the first generation, so Forward and Hannum, proteomics, metabolomics, phenotypic one modeled on the clinical biomarkers. And a lot of them were risk specific, while the DNA methylation and the glycan-based markers tracked general aging. Although the methylation acceleration of the first generation clocks wasn't predictive of future hospitalizations, the glycans and the metabolomics were most predictive of future hospitalization from a very broad range of diseases. So we already have some functional biomarkers I think should be used in a lot more research than they are now. But of course, there will be a second layer to this when you have very personalized biomarkers or very organ-specific biomarkers, which will then make it also far more exciting.
Lovely. Thanks. Perhaps we have one more question over here in the back. You had your hand up first. Eunice?
What role do rapid diagnostics play in sort of the biomarker monitoring over time, or will that, do you think, that's going to play a big role? And we're just looking at existing molecular as well as antigen tech. Can there already be some diagnostics, sent out to, for example, a customer that can continuously monitor their markers that are indicators for certain things related to longevity?
Thank you.
Yeah, you can start.
So I think in the future all tests should be rapid testing, because if you do a lot of testing as I do, the labs are awful. So they really take a long time. There are some labs that take weeks to return your results. And if you try to optimize in biochemistry, it's virtually impossible if you have a turnaround time from 4 weeks. But I'm really talking about standard lab panels or LDLP measurement or stuff. So we really need, in the future, you would have basically something, best thing would be implanted, you have real-time diagnostics of all your biomarkers. That would be my dream, You just know what's going on. You swallow the pill and you see the things going up. Not only we talked about the blood sugar measurement, but have that for everything. That would be cool, yeah.
Yes, I fully agree and support that. And we are not there just yet. I mean, for example, for these degenerative diseases, when does Alzheimer's neurodegeneration start? It's very difficult to detect at this moment in time. And then there is another, I don't want to be here the party destroyer, but at this moment in time, if you detect this, not much help, right? So we also need the drugs for that, and that's what we are working on. But of course, it helps a lot. The earlier we detect it, the better we can do something about it. But let's be honest. I mean, the pharma biotech industry has been very good in treating acute diseases, but there are no treatment whatsoever to treat degenerative diseases, and that's what makes us age. Let's face it. So the first drug, again, I'll come back to that potential drug, is for retinitis pigmentosa that we are working on to regenerate photoreceptors to cure blindness. So that's an example that hopefully is going to work out. It's going to go in human next year.
Wow.
Loves me. Okay. Maybe, Nikolina, any final words to close with?
I didn't have any final words, but I had an answer to your question. So yes, it does take a couple weeks to get your GlycanAge. So we're a bit far from rapid, but luckily there's long half-life. So the half-life is about 3 weeks. So you're still seeing the, yeah. So if you're doing it commercially, we say every 3 months or 6 months if it's something more gradual change, or once a year. But you can change your GlycanAge. So it is something movable, and we have proper, nice placebo-controlled trials and studies proving how you can change it. But we try to run it as a support clinic as well. I think that initially the scientists thought this is just going to be a biomarker, and you're just going to tell people their age, and it's going to be useful to them in some way. And then we tried that. That didn't really work. If you get an unfavorable score or surprising score in any way, and you don't get a more simplified explanation or follow-on plan on what to do, you don't really have use of it. Where it's really useful is where you have this action plan that you can follow, and a lot of it may be things you already know, or some maybe things you didn't know. Like we learned that if you're exercising and doing caloric, so if you do just caloric restriction, it's good, and it reverses your GlycanAge. If you do just exercise, like interval sprints, it's good, and it reverses it. But if you limit your calories and exercise at the same time, you create inflammation and you go up in GlycanAge, which is not good. So there's a lot of these misconceptions also. And I think when we get to the more personalized side, then it is very individual. And that's one thing we don't talk about when we talk about aging therapies. There'll never be one therapy that'll work for everybody. Even with any drug, there's never a drug that everybody responds to. So that's going to be another part of complication.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think I already have on my clock for Vision Weekend 2023, we have all the tests here. We do them all at the same time, and then we just cross-correlate. Because a few people already reached out to me and were like, hey, we want to give out a few of our tests away for Vision Weekend participants, and it was all too late for this one. No, but I actually mean in all seriousness. Like, I think we should really just do this, have them all here, have us all tested, and then just we agree of the ones that want to at least to share their data, because enough of us are taking this, I think, at the moment that I think we could learn a lot. All right, I think you got a very, very quick glimpse here into the field of longevity. If you're interested in learning more, Erin wrote a 166-page report that's lying out there on a longevity technology analysis that will guide next year's virtual programming in this area for our technical group. We also have the seminar summaries, which are always just a tiny glimpse into the individual sessions lying out here. With that, I will let you go, but not forever, but just until this afternoon, when I'm hoping to see you mingling at your technology tree, so that people can talk to you actually about the technologies that you're creating. Thank you so much for our longevity panel. And